My name's Michael Millar. I've been a professional bass trombone in Los Angeles for over 20 years, and I'm development director for Southwest Chamber Music, a two-time Grammy Award-winning ensemble based in Pasadena. I also teach part-time in the music business department at Cal Poly Pomona. Went to school at the University of Colorado in Boulder, a wonderful place to go to college, and had a good experience there, and came out in the late 70s to Los Angeles. I went to Cal State LA and got my master's degree there, studied with Roy Main, who's taught several generations of trombone players in LA, a great experience. And immediately after getting my master's there, I went on the road with Harry James, who's one of the great big band leaders and an icon. And I was the young guy on the band that had a varied age group, and was a wonderful experience. Before I went out on the road, I studied some with George Roberts, who was the great bass trombone player who really defined my instrument. And if you hear Sinatra's records, he's loaded with bass trombone, all the Nelson Riddle stuff, and George is the king of bass trombone. When I got the job on Harry James' band, he said, okay, here's what you do. You're going to be a young guy, a band with older cats. He said, here's what you do. Shut your mouth, play great, smile a lot, and listen. And that's the best advice. That's an MBA right there. Shut your mouth, play great, smile a lot, and listen. I knew the lead trombone player, who's another Roy Main student. I knew the guy who was leaving the band, and so I heard that he was leaving, so I called up the lead trombone player. I said, would you put in my name there? And he did, and I got on that band. It was a great thing, because before that, when I thought about swing music, I thought it was kind of cornball, and I'm sure when I played it, it was cornball, because that's the way I thought of it. But you get on a band like that with the energy of the people who created that music initially, and they play it with fire and integrity and excitement, and you say, wow, this is so cool. I better catch up with these guys and stylistically learn how to do this. Well, I came to LA to be in the big time, and I thought what I was doing when I came there is, well, I'll get my master's degree, I'll study some, I'll play with some of the great players there, and then I'll go back to Colorado and teach. But I got addicted to being in the culture of players who are totally devoted to excellence, who are committed to being the best ever at their instrument, to say, anything you can write, I'll play it, and then some. Write me your best stuff, your hardest stuff, and we'll just hit it out of the park. And so when you sit in groups that are consisted of people with that mindset, it's extremely addicting. And you say, oh, I have to have more of this. So I think what my goal eventually ended up being was to be a great player in every genre, that if people were listening to me playing in a big band or a commercial group, they think, well, he does this all the time. Or if I'm playing in an orchestra and doing classical stuff, to be, sound like people who do that all the time. So we have a very diverse playing culture in LA, where people really want to be able to nail every style. There's nothing you can't bring to us that we can't play great. They are developed, I believe, by the culture having existed there for a long time, and people coming there from all kinds of places. So people who have that mindset to play great music, to play in films and to hear great solos on film, or just to say, I want to do that. I want to be on the records that are made there. I want to be in the films that are made there. I want to play with these legendary players that I've always heard about. So it's just the scene there itself is an aspiration unto itself. And then when you learn what the values are of that culture, which is just killer playing and stylistic competence across the board, then you kind of come into the values of that, and additionally learn to play great and be diverse in your stylistic interpretation, so that you can do anything. I think the internet brings the world closer as far as communication. I don't think that technology has actually changed the basics of what we do, which is to communicate, to learn, to listen. What it's great at is you finding people that you might not have been able to communicate with before. I think the aspiration is always to find who's really doing this well, who are the great people that I can study, because that's where the intangibles come from in music. Is you hear not just technique, but you hear a way of interpretation, a way of conducting yourself as a professional, a way of what professionals do, and to connect with those people, and we all grab things from somebody else to try and get to cop some of that. I think there's an obligation to the art form, and with that, sometimes people are so busy that it's hard to say, okay, I'm dedicated to this, but I might not have the time. But I've found everybody to be welcoming if you call them up, or you see them on sessions or whatever, to talk to you and to impart some of their knowledge. So I think it's a competitive culture, but it's also a friendly one, in that you want to help others be great. It's something that you know, in the book I'm writing on studio brass players in LA, it's something that is a common thread, that the great players, when they were young, figured out that the older guys had a lot of knowledge that they needed to get, and so the younger guys, all the great players, they figured out how to get the knowledge from the older guys, and to be respectful, to learn, to just, as George Roberts says, shut your mouth and listen, and see what's going on around you. You should probably shut up for a long time, and you'll know when it's the time to shut your mouth, because one of the mistakes a young player can come to town and try and be a hotshot and talk a lot about what their background is. Oh, I played in this group, you know, in college, you know, and to the guys there, yeah, great, you know, isn't that special? And so, but it's a situation where if you want to come on like a hotshot, and you're sitting next to me and bragging about what you can do, well, okay, I guess you don't need any help from me, and we'll watch you crash and burn. If you come in with respectful of the culture and what's going on there, I'll say, oh, well, you know, this composer or conductor would like things this way. This is kind of, you know, let me help you out with this thing we're doing right here, and listen for this and do this, and we'll help. But it's all in the approach. I think people who are successful, unless you find some way to just sit in your house and make money doing that, you have to learn how to communicate, and that's one of the vital skills of any professional now, is to learn how to write and learn how to talk about what you do. And so to do that, it takes practice, just like playing an instrument. Because initially people are afraid to come out of the practice room and play in a big group, or to play a recital or do something like that. It's something that comes with practice, and it comes from knowing that you need to do it. So it's so you need to be able to communicate, and sometimes if you can't do something, you need to aspire to it, and to sometimes pretend like you can do it. For instance, on gigs that might be dumb gigs, and we've all played some dumb gigs, but you can't look like you're at a dumb gig. You got to look like you're having a good time there, and so to pretend, as it were. And then I would encourage people to, if you go as far as pretending you're having a good time at the dumb gig, go the last step and actually have a good time at the dumb gig, because it works. I did a session once at the University of Wisconsin and talking about professionalism, and I talked about this very thing, about looking like you had a good time. And the trombone instructor there told me the next year, he said, you know, I had a couple students that went and auditioned for an amusement park band for the summer, and they remembered what you said and looked like they were having a good time, and they got hired, and the leader told them, I hired you because it looked like you were having such a great time back there. So if you aspire to it, then you can sometimes fake it long enough, you know, fake having a good time until you can actually have a good time. Fake being personable and being outgoing until you actually are. you have to not only be a great artist, but you have to be a great communicator. And we do that as artists, and I will say that in talking about entrepreneurship, business skills, that you have to be a great musician in the first place. You know, that is number one. But if you have people with two identical skill sets as musicians and are equally great, and one can express themselves to talk about their art, to talk about people who might fund their art, or to audiences, and you have somebody who cannot communicate verbally or in writing at all, it's a no-brainer to think about which one is going to be more successful. I think it's important to acknowledge that they need to pick that up somewhere, because our teachers, we don't always learn the same things, a whole set of skills from one teacher. For instance, in trombone playing, I learned from Roy Main, who was he was a student of Louis Maggio and Jimmy Stamp, who were the legendary teachers in LA. They taught people like French horn player Vince DeRosa, Malcolm McNabb, and great players out there. So he was a student of the greatest teachers, and he knew how to teach technique, and he could hear where you were weak. You'd be playing the last week's lesson, and he would know exactly what you couldn't play. He'd be writing down some exercise you couldn't play. So he helped me with technique. George Roberts helped me just how to play standards and how to play a commercial tune and have it be pretty and beautiful. I studied with Jeff Reynolds, who's the principal bass trombone player of the Los Angeles Philharmonic for many years, and he was an encyclopedia of all the orchestral literature. So between those three teachers, I learned a great skill set, none of which the three of them were, had by themselves. So to answer your question about teaching communication, you have to pick that up somewhere. So if you go to Toastmasters or you listen to speakers, sometimes the great speakers, the great communicators are not musicians, and you have to pick that up somewhere else. Well, Southwest Chamber Music has been together 21 years. It was founded by our artistic director, Jeff Vanderschmidt, and his wife, Jan Carlin, who's the executive director, and she plays viola in the core string quartet. It's founded to present a variety of musical experiences in LA and Pasadena, sort of locally based but with a worldwide audience, and to really celebrate the diversity of art music in all its forms. So we do concerts in Los Angeles and Pasadena, and sometimes internationally. We do recordings, we do in-school education programs, and the group has won 2 Grammy Awards and 6 Grammy nominations. So it's a very exciting artistic vision and excellent business skills to back it up. We have a full-time staff of 6, and we have we believe, a great impact from our little office, and to 22 CD recordings and a lot of exciting stuff going on.
How many people are in the chamber?
It depends on the concert. So to define what we do, it's a small group. Classical music and sometimes incorporating world musics, and it's so on any given concert between 6 and 15 musicians. We do not audition for musicians, and so it is a matter of, we have a core group. We know the musicians around Los Angeles who we like to use, who have played with us over the years, and sometimes someone will come in as a sub and do a great job. And it's a very highly selective process. We have the greatest freelancers anywhere in Los Angeles, so we've got some spectacular musicians. It's a great artistic vision that Jeff Vanderschmidt has, and so he's a genius at programming and really doing exciting things. For example, no one had ever recorded all of the chamber music of Carlos Chavez, who's Mexico's greatest composers. So Jeff will find things like that to say, nobody's done that. let's do that. So we had a series of performances and a 5-CD, 4-volume set of recordings, and that's what got us the 6 Grammy nominations and 2 wins for Best Small Ensemble. Very exciting stuff, and with the Grammy Award, additional visibility. Right now we're involved with performing the music of William Kraft, who will be 85 years old this year, and we're doing a 3-concert series and have recorded all of his encounters that have been recorded over the last 30 years. So it's a matter of finding things that are really within our skill set, that are exciting, that we like to play, that we like to record, and that nobody else is doing. No one else really puts together things in the same way that we do. The music is widely available. It's now we are with Cambria Records, which is now being distributed by Naxos. So you can get it through Naxos, you can get it on CD Baby, you can get it through Southwest Chamber Music. We've got YouTube, MySpace. You look at our website, which we've just redesigned at www.swmusic.org. And so you have, before a concert, we'll have YouTube videos on there talking about what the program is, and it's all very exciting. We rehearse the week prior to a performance with intense rehearsals and schedule it that way so that the energy level is very high, just going into the performance, and then if we're recording, the recording sessions is immediately the next day following the performances. But basically you have the people out of the LA freelance pool who play in film sessions, who play in local orchestras, who do the work that classical musicians do around LA. We have folks that sub in the LA Philharmonic, and it's a great group of people. Well, it's a matter of having a dream and thinking, what is my dream in the best of possible worlds. If you get into music, it's not for wimps. It's for people who really have something they want to do. They're musicians because they can't envision doing anything else. So you might as well, if you don't want to have the woulda, shoulda, couldas in your life, you might as well think, what is the very best thing that I could do that really is within my skill set, that's something if I really work hard that maybe it could come true. And then, okay, so I've got that dream. If I were doing that dream and putting everything behind it, what would I be doing today to move towards that? And so you set some goals. So who would I have to talk to? Who would I have to learn from? What would I need to read? What skills would I need to develop as a performer? Who is doing that well right now, and what can I learn from those people? It's about studying people who have achieved their dreams and see what they learned along the way. And every great entrepreneur does that, is to know their own skill sets and what they do now and what they could become, and to look at the market out there and really study, what is available as far as income. Because unless you're going to live above mom and dad's garage forever, or you have a trust fund, something most people want to receive income on what they're doing, then you do that and you go and say, how could my skills match up with that market out there in unique ways so that I don't have a lot of competition? If you want to go and audition for an orchestra job and there's 200 people auditioning, you better be the best in the world. You better be able to play those excerpts in a burning house in order to get that job. And most people aren't quite that good. So if you say, well, here are my skills. For example, I have a colleague, Kim Hulbert, who, and Kim was a great singer, and she has a master's in vocal pedagogy, and she likes women's barbershop. And so she joined the Sweet Adelines, and she's 2-time international championship with women's barbershop groups. And she looked around and said, there isn't anybody coaching women's barbershop or any barbershop at all. Yeah, I have a master's in that. I could teach that. So now she's flying somewhere every weekend to do, for big bucks, to do vocal coaching for barbershop groups because she understands the genre. She has the training to do it. Looked around and there's a field of work where there was 0 people in it. I think the greatest musicians, that they can sell their art somehow. And if you have to be so good that you can do it without any artistry, then you probably have to give up control for somebody else to market your skills. And it's best to really have some control of what you do and how you project it out there. I mean, and this goes back to Franz Liszt, and before that, people who were stars. He knew how to write music and to play and to connect to an audience. You know, to me, the best people are the ones who do great artistry, and they're able to connect with people and talk about it. So the third factor of the entrepreneurship, when you go to, to know your strengths, to know your markets, know your potential customers, audience, people you need to connect with. And then the third thing is to tell your story. So the great artists who can tell their story, they're the ones who can talk to a record producer or a record company or somebody who's a presenter, or talk to an audience when you're performing, or talk to a group of students and build your own income through making connections through your artistry and also through your verbal and written communication skills. I think it's necessary to commit to lifelong learning, and I view a college experience as being a transition, as a step along that path. You've been an elementary school student, a high school student. As a college student, you're upping your requirements, your work as far as what you're doing there. And music programs are great. They teach a comprehensive set of skills. You can really build those skills so you have your performance, you have your music theory, which is extremely important, the history of what we're doing, so you understand, where we've come from as musicians. It's very important. And you play in ensembles, and you're able to make your mistakes and do your learning in a way when money is not on the line. So for me, I was not a prodigy. I was an engineering major and then a business major before I became a music major, and I was not a great trombone player. But what I did that was, to this day, exciting to me, is that I learned how to get a little bit better at what I do every day, and to love that ongoing learning, and to love the excellence, and to love the growth, and that, I think, is key. So in a university program, it's a great thing, and it's a place where people can learn, and if I'd gone out into the professional world at the time that I was in college, I would have been totally hammered down. I would not have had the strength to know that that I had the capability. So it allowed me to develop, and it's extremely important. In addition to being in a college, you need to look at your specific career goals, and if your college doesn't offer that, you go out and get that yourself, and that's where the internet comes in, that's where books come in, that's where looking at artist house music and on your website, and seeing who the great people are, what they're doing, how they did it, and what knowledge they need to build in addition to what they're doing at school. Even though you might not know, your goals might change. But if you don't have a goal that, here's what I'm going to try right now, you got to get out there and try something. And I hear a lot of students say, well, when I'm done with my bachelor's degree, I'll do this. Well, what are you doing now towards that goal? It's a cop-out to think that you're going to do it that last 6 months before you graduate, and then you're not as prepared as somebody who's really been thinking about that along the line. And you may fail in the first thing you try. Most people don't end up in exactly the same thing that they majored in or that they thought they were going to do on that day of graduation. But what musicianship is about, what success is about setting goals and going for it. And along the way you say, oh, I really need a different goal. Fine, at least you have the practice at working towards goals. And sometimes you don't have the experiences, to your earlier question, you don't have the experience to see what the end goal is. I had a student come up to me after a clinic that I gave, and he said, my teacher is a great player. and I'm not such a great player. He says, I can't see how I can get to being a great player. I don't see how the path as to how I would get there. And I said, well, you don't need to see the whole route. I said, can you, if you took the things you worked on in your lesson this week and you worked really hard at a few key things, could you be better at those things by the time of your lesson next week? He says, yeah. That's it. You just go and you acquire the skill to be better all the time and to be relentless. As I said, I wasn't a prodigy, and the tortoise and the hare, I'm the tortoise all the way. I learned to keep moving along, and that kind of drive is relentless, and it's where success comes from. They had goals. I'm sure, that it may have been only understood, to them, but it's it's something that people have to proceed in their own way. And I'm sure every great artist has always thought of what their next step has to be and what they need to acquire to play that sound that's in their head. What do I need to get there next? Peter Drucker was the father of modern management. He died a few years ago at the age of 95, and he was advisor to presidents going back to Truman and to all his corporate CEOs, and he was a master at taking big issues and narrowing them down to focused questions that you could really get a handle on, but also work on forever. And as I did in my presentation yesterday, the questions I give to students and everyone I'm talking to: what is my mission? Who is my customer? What does my customer value? What are my results? What is my plan? But he talked a lot about other things too, to focus on opportunity rather than problems, to concentrate on strengths, to make your strengths effective and your weaknesses irrelevant. He was a master and a genius, and it changed my life to think about things in the way he did. And in doing what I do as development director for Southwest Chamber Music, we've really incorporated a lot of the management principles that he espoused into how we run the organization. And our artistic director and executive director, they already are quite familiar with Peter Drucker before I came along. But it's really helpful to have everybody on the same page, to know what our mission is, and to work together as an organization. So it's really helped me to be able to take what we do as artists and then be able to communicate it in the same way, where we can articulate what our goals are. We can say what our results have been. We say what we're doing as artists, and we are able to communicate that verbally and in writing to a variety of people, because we all need funding for what we do, and we need audiences. We need to engage people in a variety of ways, and artistic groups do engage people in a variety of ways. You need to connect with them artistically. You need to give them that connection to the heart that we do with music, and that is always the primary thing that we do, is to be artists and to make that emotional connection with people, to give them that amazing experience that only music and only art will do. And past that, we need to define why that's important. Why kids in school are enabled in their lives to achieve and to experience great things through music education, how we can help that, to talk to foundations and corporations and funders about why that's important, why what we do is important in fulfilling that need. And it's a great thing to be able to take my doctoral education at Claremont Graduate University in both music, in the history of ideas, and at the Drucker School of the history of management and how to be effective as human beings. It's been a privilege to incorporate that into what I do now.
Now, if someone wanted to read more about Peter Drucker, what books does he have that somebody might be able to take over as their website? They can visit, doing?
Well, the best website for all the Peter Drucker work is the Leader to Leader Institute, and I think it's leadertoleader.org. But if you look up Leader to Leader and Peter Drucker, you will find the Leader to Leader Institute, which was the Peter Drucker Foundation when it began, and it's a nonprofit think tank to enable the social sector to be more effective and to do greater things. And there's a lot of his articles there. There's lists of his books. For people new to Peter Drucker, I would recommend the Effective Executive and Innovation and Entrepreneurship, one of the first books on entrepreneurship, which is great, and his books are timeless and useful for everybody, not just business people, because our goal as musicians is to be more effective as musicians, not to be more effective as business people, to have the business skills serve our artistry.
To that end, does it feel weird to use the word customer in what you were saying?
It does not, because, well, when I use it, I have to define what I mean. And what I mean is that it's the people we serve. And so that's the people who are in our audiences, the people, everybody who supports music as a presenter, the conductor, the composer, your fellow musicians. So it's really who am I integrating with in this whole musical endeavor, from the creative side to the management side to the consumer side, and to realize, who all these folks are, and to realize I am serving them all. Leonard Bernstein said that his mission was to serve music and to serve others through music. And when you're serving others through music, that's the customer I'm talking about.
Well, and I'll ask you one last question in a much more broader sense. If you had to forecast 20 to 30 years out, what do you think we're going to be looking at for musicians and maybe the people they serve? From just where's it going to be? I mean, is it going to be online? Is it going to be the same thing it is now, just different?
The future is always hard to predict. What I see out there now is people being able to communicate better, and with that, for niche markets. What we're doing with Southwest Chamber Music now would be not as possible without the internet and being able to connect with diverse communities worldwide. Southwest was the first ensemble to have a residency in Vietnam since the end of the Vietnam War. And so we have international collaborations where we'll do a tour like that and then collaborate and interact with that community in Los Angeles too. So you're able to take a very narrow field, perhaps, and to attract a worldwide audience with the numbers through that communication. So I think that the niche markets will help, and that's very entrepreneurial. It means you can do the things you really like doing and then be able to connect with that broad market through our communication tools. When I was director of the Entrepreneurship Center for Music at the University of Colorado, my goal for all of my students and for the music department in general was not to talk people into doing something that I wanted them to do, but rather to do what they wanted to do, whether it was compose or be a musicologist or a jazz player or whatever kind of instrumentalist. Yeah, do that. Do your dream. Make it happen, and do it in a way that's smart, that's intelligent, that reaches the most people that can possibly reach, so that your entrepreneurship is really carrying your dream to the most people and to some lifelong of achievement and income for you. And look at probably one of the greatest speeches of all time, Martin Luther King. I have a dream. Wow. I mean, that's powerful. Dreams are powerful. And if you say, what is the best thing that could happen to me as a musician? Well, why not give that a shot? And if you're giving it a shot, do it in an intelligent way that uses every resource, every skill you have, and be aggressive. Because if you're not aggressive in going after your dream, then you run up against people like me and my colleagues in LA. And we are fierce in what we do, not in competing with other people, but in making our dream happen and being great at what we do. And if you want to come play the game with us, you better bring your game.